international border, making Ghana's frontier lines incredibly vulnerable to cross-border contagion. Ladies and gentlemen, please, let's welcome Her Excellency Josephine Nkrumah for brief remarks leading us to the lecture.
I know that the protocols have been very eloquently established and therefore permit me to stand on those protocols. When I was invited to share or to act as chair for today's event, I said, wow, sometimes there's a certain connectedness that we never really understand until it really happens. A few years ago, when Ghana reviewed and put together its current national security strategy, I was chair of NCC at the time, and our task was to ensure that a proper study had been carried out, but beyond that, to engage the citizenry in understanding security as a whole of society approach. And in that period, it brought to the fore how important it was for us to speak beyond our security agencies when it comes to safeguarding our frontiers. And those conversations also revealed that the average Ghanaian is alive to some of these threats, but the implications of it somehow are lost on them. It's almost as if we understand it, but it's not with us. But those conversations revealed how real it is and how important it is for us to have these discussions as a people, as a citizenry, because security is the heart of how we live. And then I read the, the theme again, and I said, wow, maritime law is my background. And it sits very well in what I do. Then in addition, I realized that I'd served ECOWAS, and so I had also become very exposed to regional security, and I was excited and humbled at the same time that I'd been given the opportunity to chair today's occasion. A lot has been said, but the important thing is that we have a convergence of mind, academia, professionals, security, and it's become a melting pot and take from here. My few points I'd like to highlight for me are that, one, I was excited that in talking about security, we have brought in the angle maritime security. I think sometimes it is left in the background, and to bring it to the fore and have this conversation today, understanding the nexus of what occurs in the Sahel and its impact in the littoral states is of immense importance. Today we are aware that there is an unrelenting push towards the littoral states, so that you see violent extremism creeping. I don't even know if I should use the word creeping, but, fast approaching. And if we do not have a somber reflection and have discussions that enable us to shape policy, review our initiatives, we won't be going far. It's also important to note that the Gulf of Guinea comprises a number of coastal states. Ghana is one of those coastal states. And whilst we see initiatives like the Accra Initiative, you see the ECOWAS integrated maritime strategy that has references to maritime security and indeed the conflict prevention and resolution strategies of ECOWAS. we see all of these things come together and must understand that the conversations should not only be on our national platforms. They must go beyond, and we must deepen the conversations as a regional community. For instance, as I served in Liberia, I realized that we have the Accra Initiative, and yet quite a number of states who, to my mind, are even more vulnerable than Ghana is, are not in that space of that Accra Initiative where we share intelligence, we share information. And whilst I was in Liberia, it was one of the things I kept pushing for, that we need to include more of our states in the coast, our coastal states, in this very important conversation, because after all, you are only as strong as your weakest link. So we need to harness our efforts. We need to ensure that the conversations that we have really transcend our, and we deepen that conversation on the regional level. Security affects all of us. Some of the previous speakers have alluded to some of the things and the implications of the ordinary trader is affected. Vulnerable coastal communities are affected. Our assets in our oil drilling, maritime space are affected. Shipping is affected. When shipping is affected, it drives the cost of insurance and freight, which affects everybody's pockets. It affects, food security. More than 60% rely on fish as every one of us. I'm glad that we have the media here and paying close attention to the conversations, but that they would continue these conversations in the media space. It is of paramount importance. And as we go on, I am sure that the foremost experts we have in the room, or our lecturers who are here today to share and enlighten us on this subject matter, will do justice to the topic. I'm excited and I'm looking forward to your cooperation. And as we have as we listen to the lectures, please let us have some thought-provoking discussions that follow this, that ensure that we leave here further enlightened, but also we leave here ready to share this conversation with the next person. I hope that the commandant in the future will also invite perhaps schools to participate in this, ordinary citizens to participate in this. Because if we say that security is a whole of society approach, then I believe that we must have a bit of representation here and get the views of such of a cross section of our citizenry to participate in this as well. Professor Enin and Vice Admiral, I am looking forward to your lecture and I'm relishing what you're going to share with us. Audience, I look forward to your kind cooperation as well, and I'm sure that the next hour or so are going to be very, very exciting for all of us. I thank you for your attention.
So now, giddy your loins, the millions of citizens and abroad who are watching us, home and abroad who are watching us on Channel 1, Joy News channel, and as we are streaming live on YouTube as well, and on Facebook, get ready to learn a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, to deliver our first keynote perspective, we welcome a man I have hosted many times and have been in awe of his knowledge. A towering titan in the global security architecture, as we have been told by Ambassador. He is an internationally sought after researcher, policy advisor, and defense analyst whose expertise has shaped counterterrorism and peacekeeping strategies for the United Nations, the African Union, and ECOWAS. Known across the continent for his fiercely candid, I can testify to that, candid, data-driven insight into West African geopolitics, please put your hands together and make welcome renowned security consultants, Professor Kwesi Enin.
Representatives of service chiefs, commandants, former commandants, alumni, development partners, media practitioners, serving and retired generals, my dear co-panelist, Vice Admiral Isa Adam Yakubu, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. It's an honor to co-deliver the Ghana Armed Forces Command and Staff College's 50th Anniversary Republic Day Lecture under the theme Celebrating 50 Years of Excellence in Military Education. Madam Chair, let me begin by quoting Marcus Tullius Cicero. To be ignorant of what occurred before you or before you were born is to remain always a child. For what is the worth of human life unless it is woven into the life of our ancestors by the records of history? The history of this school started not just in 1976, but in the immediate post-independence period. And I want to quote Dr. Nkrumah very clearly for what he thought about military education. First, Dr. Nkrumah thought that military education should serve as a vanguard force to contribute to liberating this continent. Number two, Nkrumah thought that education was only worthwhile and useful if it transformed the lives of the people that it served. What it means in practice is that for a command and staff college, the quality of the education that is provided to you must ask very critical, tough questions about the nature of the crisis that we are talking about. Cicero's quote, and Nkrumah's politics, emphasizes the importance of historical knowledge, implying that ignorance of the past limits our understanding of the present. Historical knowledge helps shape our planning and strategic choices for the future. It implies that without us understanding our past, we lack the context, the knowledge, and the vision necessary to navigate the complexities of contemporary life. I want to congratulate the leaders of this college who have brought us thus far. And I want to say shame to our detractors when this college was established, who wrote that the college was a pipe dream. Shame unto you, who thought that Africans can only dream. This has become a reality. So congratulations on the 50th anniversary, Ayuko Commandant, and very well done. Madam Chair, let me now turn to the business of this afternoon. The title, From the Sahel to the Gulf of Guinea: Violent Extremism and Maritime Insecurity in West Africa, Implications for Ghana and Regional Security. I shall focus on the violent extremism section. To do justice to that, first I provide a discursive analysis of the state of violent extremism in the Sahel. I use Mali and Mali's descent into spiraling violence and what has been aptly captured by my colleague Efwa Lamte as the audaciousness of terrorists. Third, I present my positionality and reflexivity in understanding the wider implications of the Sahel crisis for Ghana and regional security. I'm not just going to stand here and tell you that these are the implications. We need to do a context-based analysis to arrive at that. And I'll share some concluding thoughts. But before that, as a school teacher, there are occasions when you meet a student who is brilliant, but you cannot tell that student, except when the student exposes himself. And occasionally writes some chapters that you learn from. So, Lieutenant General, you know your chapters 3 and 4 have delayed. So, I am looking forward to it very soon. Not so much as to mark it, but as to learn from you. Madam Chair, since 2020, the Sahel has turned West Africa into the global epicenter of violent extremism and terrorism, and the global hotspot for terror. But this is nothing new. As far back as 1973, Keith described the Sahel, quote, as Africa's great divide, and concluded that instability is pervasive. The Sahel situation is known, so I don't want to bore you, and we don't have time. But I want to make 2 points. First, that I'll mention in passing very quickly what is happening in the 3 countries, but focus on Mali as a case study of what happened there and what we ought not to do. That, I can assure you, will be quite unpleasant. Since the coup in Niger in 23, civilian deaths have grown, terrorist groups have taken over, with operations concentrated in the west and the southeast of the country. Attacks have escalated, targeting civilians and military personnel. In 2025, Niger announced a joint anti-jihadist force with Mali and Burkina Faso under the aegis of the AES aimed at combating terror. The situation as at 2026 remains tense, with ongoing military operations in the capital, Niamey, while the countryside faces significant challenges. Overall, the situation in Niger remains very critical. In 2026 alone, its airport has been attacked twice by Islamic State in the Sahel province. The attacks are daring, increasingly targeting cities and urban centers where they are competing for influence and territories. Earlier on, the argument was that terrorists were not interested in holding on to territories. That has changed. Now they want to govern. Now they are providing social welfare. That provides a particular type of challenge to the sovereign state. The second is Burkina Faso. Burkina is experiencing a surge in terrorist violence, driven primarily by JNIM and ISJS. They are using coordinated raids, IEDs, and multi-pronged assault to seize weapons, fuel, and vehicles. It's also carried out on humanitarian convoys. My empirical case, with implications for Ghana and regional security, is Mali, which I will focus on, and when combined with Burkina Faso and Niger, has serious implications for both Ghana and regional security, and shows the audaciousness of the rhetoric and the actions. Here also, JNIM and Islamic State are very active. Mali epitomizes the challenges that we face because of the coordinated attacks, the planning, the sophistication, the logistics, and the daringness in managing to capture the capital and to kill the defense minister. My colleague Efwa Lamte uses the phrase the audaciousness of terrorists because they've now put a €2 million bill on the president's head. When terrorists begin to challenge the authority of the state to that extent, it raises fundamental questions. Their activities now stretch over 3,000 kilometers across the whole of the West African sub-region. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has posited that closer collaboration, coordination, and linkages amongst violent extremist groups are providing a growing global threat. Chair, I argue that though the violence in the Sahel and increasingly in the northern parts of the coastal states are presented as a spillover, these insecurities have arisen out of the interplay between coup d'etats, corruption, blatant theft of state resources, bad governance, and then, of course, poverty, which have become mutually reinforcing, making it difficult to escape a cycle of political and economic instability that arise from the exploitation of existing and evolving domestic security challenges with overlays and other influences. This raises a couple of questions. First, what is unique about these African cases? Second, is time running out to sustainably resolve the by violence in the Sahel, especially Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger? If so, what are the implications for Ghana and regional security? Have these problems or super wicked problems? Chair, Mali's descent into spiraling violence is that we need to come to grips and by extension understand the Sahel's ever-evolving conflict. I posit that any analysis of the conflict parties' interest and an analysis should be the context around which Ghana and regional security must be understood, tackled, and learned from. First, in Mali, we saw a multiplicity of external bilateral actors. Second, several multilateral agencies sought, quote, to train the Malian armed forces under different types of common defense and security policies. Third, were multilateral establishments amongst African groups. Fourth, raises the question, what drove these multilateral and multiple actors into Mali? And finally, what lessons, if any, can we learn? But what the Mali story tells us is that all these groups came into Mali claiming that they were coming to educate, to protect, to self-sustain, and to support. They also claimed that they sought to reduce refugee flows into Western Europe, these groups, improving local security forces, promoting multilateralism, reinforcing the EU security identity, and strengthening bilateral partnerships with allies. The only thing that succeeded in Mali was its ability to reduce refugee flows into Europe. What it means is that we need, as a military school, as sovereign states, to ask tough questions when people come bearing presents. Mali's descent into instability shows the need for critical self-assessment of how rationales for interventions in all its forms are undertaken. We need to engage with the dominant understandings of the overriding domestic drivers of conflict and how, in responding to conflicts and building sustainable peace, we understand the context of the interplay between the domestic and extraneous circumstances. But more importantly, we also need to understand who the critical constituents of the state are. More often than not, we think we are in the capitals and we know it all. That leads to problems. Third is what the Special Envoy for the Sahel had stated, which I find very useful for our context today. Larry Beblolati has argued that the experience of recent years has shown that when the priorities of external partners shift, as they inevitably do, the states most dependent on that support face sudden and destabilizing gaps. The Sahelian states have experienced this firsthand. I think, Chair, this now brings me to my positionality and reflexivity in understanding the Sahel and its wider implications. How does positionality contribute to defining our understanding of the variables necessary in assessing conflict onset and how peace is built? And how does this situate in the implications for Ghana and regional security? Mali's case and Bevlolati's cautionary statements are key. I also follow Barr's arguments in terms of the interpretations of reflexivity. One, in terms of our position as a military school, training senior officers who will be confronting these challenges on a daily basis. The second is our boldness to critique the knowledge that is presented to you. And the third is how does your positionality and your critique then affect your practice approach when you get into the field. Chair, from a positionality perspective, the object of my reflections this evening is in the scholarship itself and the relationship between myself as the scholar and the community, that is Ghana and West Africa, which are the objects of our knowledge discussions this evening. Reflexivity, therefore, is about my self-awareness and my positionality as a knowledge producer. Consistently, I now turn to my position as a scholar practitioner to raise several questions. First, who determines what variables are used to analyze when the state is at a tipping point for conflict onset? What explains the traffic jam, concoction of programs and support initiatives for pre-conflict and post-conflict situations? Who determines what interventions by which group should be placed where, when, and how? Fourth, in discussing the basis for determining who, where, how, and what intervention should occur, what role should what I term as converse intersubjective analysis play in determining where states place and locate their efforts? I will come to this during the conclusion. What then are the implications of the above for Ghana? Half a century ago, Professor Albert Edubuahene spoke of the paradox of the Ghanaian Sphinx. The paradox 50 years ago was that why should a country that is so well endowed be so poor? My argument today is that we should not allow that paradox still to haunt us. 50 years on, this celebration must afford us the opportunities to reflect on how we produce knowledge about conflict, how we distribute that knowledge, and the role as a military college of excellence with peacekeeping experiences in different parts of the world can help in ensuring that we don't experience a Janus-faced security paradox, in which we think our northern borders are unsafe, but we take our eye off the ball where there's galamsey, illicit financial flows, youth unemployment. We have seen the floods. Terrorists will exploit where there's least resistance. Chair, how does the Sahel then translate into Ghana's potential challenges? And how can our interpretation or misinterpretation of such realities lead to a possible new Ghanaian Janus-faced security paradox? Any interpretation of the implications of the Sahel insecurities for Ghana portrays 5 or 6 things. First, a possible physical security threat on the Burkina border. Some tomato sellers died. I sympathize with them. That is where my sympathy ends. They managed to cross the border, traveled almost 500 kilometers into enemy territory, and did their business. What did they negotiate with? How did they negotiate safe passage? What intelligence did they take from Ghana out there? Until we resolve these problems, the argument of this southward drive becomes weak. 2, it's an economic threat via illicit gold, cattle trade, organized crime, and investor risk. 3rd, it's a humanitarian burden from displacement and food insecurity stress. 4th is that the implications are both a diplomatic cost, but also an opportunity for Ghana. For Ghana as a regional security, because as regional security and cooperative structures weaken, and existing security dynamics are modified. Ghana is going to host, I think, as chair of ECOWAS or AU very soon. This is a great opportunity for our defense and foreign policy establishment to demonstrate leadership and Ghana's new posture. There's a long-term risk of domestic radicalization if the intersections of northern marginalization and southern opportunities for crime are not addressed. For Ghana, the implications seem to be very direct. Some more pressure on our northern borders, higher costs for joint patrols, and a trading partner, Burkina Faso, that is simultaneously a security risk, suspicious of its southern neighbor, partly because of the tomato traders and what we said in the US earlier on, but also as a transit client. Although we have avoided a major domestic attack, there are possible emerging patterns that are signposts that mirrors potential early-stage problems. So let me leave it at that and speak about the implications for regional security. Expanding violence from the Sahel is no more just a Sahel problem. The geography of risk is expanding. The Sahel has now become an existential stress test for the whole of the region. So the first implication is the rupturing of security cooperation. The decision by the AES countries to leave, and of course, I think everybody knows where I stand when it comes to ECOWAS's behavior during that period. 2 is the contested political credibility that we are experiencing with ECOWAS now. The West African sub-region is facing 2 terrible problems. One is issues of the democratic reversals, and second, of course, the insecurity that we are seeing. Festus Abouaje has argued quite eloquently that the AES withdrawal from ECOWAS has dealt a significant blow to African regional integration and cooperation architecture, increasingly characterized by a lack of transparency in decision-making, coordination, and ownership. But Festus also has argued quite eloquently that the challenges of the disintegration also creates opportunities for us to go outside the box to see if we cannot re-evaluate for regional integration. And Festus's argument seems to have some very firm grounds, because we are seeing statements out of Abuja and Accra and Lome arguing for a new security reconfiguration. We are seeing engaging with the AES states in joint training, sharing of intelligence, and we need to look at that. After the demise of the Accra Initiative, there's a Gulf of Guinea Sahel cooperation framework that is being discussed. But probably the greatest challenge for us is the impact on trade dynamics and free movement. One is the loss of market access. I think my friend Samson spoke about tomatoes. But we also know how onions at a point in time became a scarce commodity in this country. So the implications are dire and the implications are massive. There are trade facilitation challenges. As AES countries seek to establish alternative frameworks for regional cooperation. I will leave my friend, the former CNS, to talk about the impact on maritime access. But we are also seeing external powers desperate to fill the gaps and complicating ECOWAS's leverage. We are seeing the AES states having expelled the French, UN, and US troops and aligning themselves with new powers, bringing in new security contractors. Finally, on the regional implications, is that we are seeing regional security increasingly very shaky and struggling to adapt. There's an ongoing reconfiguration process, even amongst the member states of ECOWAS themselves. Both Ghana and Nigeria's foreign ministers are advocating, quote, for local security solutions. Furthermore, the Ghanaian president has engaged in personal diplomacy with Burkina Faso and quite a number of other countries also. So we are seeing a new reconfiguration, and I think this creates particular opportunities for Ghana. Let me conclude my conversation this afternoon. And this is where I raise, Madam Chair, some tough issues that we need to discuss. I indicated earlier that I will return to the 4 questions that I posed, and I shall be brief. First, who determines the variables used to analyze when a state is at a tipping point for conflict onset? My argument made earlier on with Kudanso is that this determination must be made primarily by those who feel the pain. But the Mali lesson does not tell us so. Mali allowed externals to make too many of those decisions. This is because the overriding security discourse also determines the types of programming and response options that are presented to recipient states. What it means is that we as a people must determine what the problem is, where the problems are, how we think we can resolve them, and what the instruments for resolution are. There is no doubt that in the production of knowledge, there are power imbalances. But this is where a school like this has a role to play. I can stand here and tell you Mali is good or bad, but that's not the point. The point is that how do you use the variables presented to this school of excellence to determine how you arrive at your conclusions that informs your practice? So your position here as scholars in this school must lead you to ask tough questions, do the analysis, draw the conclusions that leads you to determine what the practice options are. Second, what explains the traffic jam or spaghetti concoction of programs and support initiatives for pre-conflict and post-conflict situations? The simple answer is that this lack of inclusiveness in understanding the knowledge around the conflicts lead to the undue securitization of weak, fragile, and collapsed states. We acknowledge the significance of historical legacies, but quite a number of them are also very toxic and create, in several cases, socially constructed and political contested spaces. And I think when the deputy minister's speech was read, there was a phrase that was used, ungoverned spaces. There is no ungoverned space. Those spaces are alternatively governed. And those are the critical engagements that we expect you to have in such a school. Because when we mislabel, it has dangerous potential implications for Ghana and for regional security. And I think there are several useful lenses that prevent us from making that mistake. Third, who determines what interventions by who should be placed where? Mali once more provides an applicable lens for learning. State authorities should by all means have a greater appreciation of what their needs are and where they are most needed. This is captured by the high-level conference in Accra in March 2026 that emphasized the requirement for the state and its mechanisms, particularly when supported by outsiders, to have greater ownership in defining their priorities as they identify them on the ground. And I think this point made by the NCC much earlier on about ensuring local buy-in so that local concerns are not determined 800 kilometers away. In value determination, we have a key role to play in knowledge generation and dissemination, and by telling our own stories using our own scientific tools. Fourth, in discussing the basis for determining who, where, and what intervention should occur, what role should intersubjective analysis play in defining where states place and locate their efforts? For Ghana and regional security, what are the other security challenges that pose existential threats? What metrics should we use in determining what these threats are and what the thresholds are, so that we can arrive at a decision as to what types of threats pose existential challenges to us as opposed to others? And finally, what response measures are necessary? I argue that in the Ghana and regional security case, we do not need only securitization processes to determine the existential ramifications of the threat. We also need alternatives, or what I term as converse intersubjectiveness. So the narrative is that the threat is coming from the north, it's so big, so we should send as much resources there to stop it. But nobody has died so far, and here I salute all of you for your hard work. But if we look at road traffic accidents, the number of people who have died, who are hurt, the number of cars that have been destroyed, the roads that have been destroyed, and the sum total cost to the state, then we need to ask ourselves a fundamental question. For those of our friends who tell us where the trouble is coming from, if they lost 2,000 people in 6 months, would they put their money where there has been no death, or they will put their money in preventing road traffic accidents? I think the answer is very obvious. Converse intersubjectiveness brings in small arms and light weapons. We've suddenly heard about all licenses being abrogated, seen people being shot left, right, and center, about pandemics, about floods. The CDS just told us, or the minister just told us through the CDS, that this is now a major threat and it's not going to end. Drought, corruption, malaria, tuberculosis. Namely, the day-to-day challenges that we face, that kills, that maims, that destroys livelihoods, more than the actual toll of the violence inflicted on societies by terror. The facts speak for themselves. These are low-hanging fruits that states can reach for as they build resilient, cohesive nations. We need an inside-out approach that guarantees citizen participation, citizen contribution, and a listening ear in formulating what the threats are and in providing the frameworks for resistance. Ghana's response to and regional security current difficulties therefore requires creative ideas and leadership. The net effect is that if we don't do so, we will bring shame onto ourselves, just like it has happened elsewhere. We will divide ourselves and be permanently reduced to floundering for solutions. Let me take this opportunity to thank the One Ghana movement for this opportunity, but certainly to thank the Command and Staff College also for the opportunity to contribute to this conversation. This will be an ongoing conversation. We may not get all the answers today, but my role here is to challenge and to look at the counterfactual. We need to ask different questions to get different solutions or different answers that responds to our lived experiences and challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Kwesi Enin. And whilst I was monitoring my time and writing pieces of notes ready to come here and alert him that he should be getting ready to end, he was keeping the time with such precision that he eventually left me with no further work to do. He actually finished ahead of his time. Please, a round of applause for Professor Kwesi Enin again. Very deep insights, and as he spoke, a journalist began a conversation with me about his first encounter with Professor Enin. I'll tell that story later. He's very excited encountering him one more time. So for all of you who are watching us either on Channel 1 television or on Joy News, or you're watching the live stream, thank you for joining us. It's a very important subject that we all need to be abreast with. So we understand that traditional piracy numbers have fluctuated due to robust naval patrols. Do we have the Navy here? Thank you very much. Please, let's clap for them for a great job they have been doing. illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing alone now drains an estimated 2.3 billion US dollars annually from West African economies. So it is very important. Our next speaker, our next teacher, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome a distinguished officer who has commanded at the highest echelons of our national defense maritime architecture, with decades of strategic leadership, navigating the complex security dynamics of the Atlantic. He is the immediate past helmsman of our territorial waters. Please, let's stand and help me welcome the former Chief of Naval Staff, Vice Admiral Isa Yakubu, retired. Stand and stretch. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Please. Okay. Which one? Wow. Our guest of honor, Lieutenant General William Adepon, Chief of the Defense Staff, Madam Chair, representatives of service chiefs, commandants, distinguished generals, both serving and retired, chief executives, I've seen a few here, and our distinguished invited guests, friends of the media. Let me stand on this protocol. It's been well established, and quickly go through my notes. First of all, I want to make it clear, I'm not a scholar, neither am I an academic. As the Chief of Defense Staff said, he's an infantry officer. I am a surface warfare officer or an executive officer. That is who I am. I'm here to share my experience from the tactical level to the operational level to the military strategic level, and I have been passionate about our maritime domain and its potential. And that's what keeps me going in that field. So first of all, let me extend my warmest congratulations and best wishes to the Ghana Armed Forces Command and Staff College on the occasion of its 50th anniversary. It's a genuine honor to return to an institution that has played such a defining role in my professional journey. As you were told during my introduction, that my relationship with distinguished college, yes. I had the privilege of undertaking my senior command and staff course here, and later serve a cumulative 4 years as directing staff. We are not lecturers, we don't teach, we just direct. And also as acting chief instructor, that is head of the naval faculty. Subsequently, during my tenure as chief of the naval staff from 2021, the staff college board is the highest decision-making board for college. So in many respects, I have not observed the college evolution. I have been privileged to contribute in some small way to its enduring pursuit of professional and academic excellence. It is for this reason that I am particularly grateful to the Commandant, the One Ghana movement, and the organizing committee for inviting me to deliver this anniversary lecture. Actually, I've been in touch with senior host who I know was running this. It's a privilege to meet Prof. and also Samson, and I don't miss news file, I was telling you. On Saturday, all my radios are on in every corner. So as I move around, I make sure I don't miss anything. Thank you very much for keeping that discourse going. So, To be associated with the celebration of this remarkable milestone is therefore both a privilege and a deeply personal to me. I'm equally delighted to share this platform with one of Africa's foremost security scholars, Professor Kwesi Enin, whose contributions to security policy and strategic thought have enriched for many years, as has already been acknowledged. Finally, let me acknowledge our distinguished chairperson, Ambassador Josephine Nkrumah. Beyond her distinguished diplomatic career and expertise in maritime law, she is also a proud daughter of the Ghana Navy, the daughter of Commander Nkrumah, retired. That gives me every confidence that she will be favorably disposed to me as she steers proceedings. If that doesn't happen, I'll have no cause but to call Daddy. So today's topic, from the Sahel to the Gulf of Guinea, addressing violent extremism and maritime insecurity in West Africa, implications for Ghana and regional security, is as timely as it is critical. The nexus between violent extremism and maritime insecurity has been well established by scholars and practitioners, and I hope to shed light on how these challenges intersect and what they mean for our national regional security. I will attempt to cover the scope as shown on the screen. That is how we say it in the military. Sorry, my slides are not very clear. So, maritime security as a pillar of sovereignty. Today is 1st July, so it's Republic Day. So on Republic Day, we celebrate Ghana's full sovereignty and republican status. It is therefore fitting to discuss maritime security, which stays at the heart of sovereignty. Simply put, no coastal nation can claim to be fully sovereign if it cannot secure its coastline and maritime domain, as defined by international law. Oceans cover more than 70% of the Earth's surface, and the United Nations Conventions on the Law of the Sea, that is UNCLOS, grants coastal states sovereign rights over vast maritime zones, including a territorial sea and an exclusive economic zone. If we cannot defend and preserve these waters, then our sovereignty is complete. Unlike on land, where physical invasion is difficult and rare, intrusions at sea occur daily for many nations through illegal fishing, smuggling, transnational crimes. Many countries do not fully appreciate the importance of the maritime domain, sometimes until it is too late. So over the last 500 years, no country has become a great power without effective use of the maritime domain, and this is a fact. This well-established insight reminds us that sea power underpins national power. Dominance of the sea has historically been a prerequisite for broad influence. Now, Ghana is not aspiring to global dominance, but we do seek regional influence for our security and prosperity. And to achieve that, we must harness maritime power. Our national experience bears this out. For example, during the ECOMOG peacekeeping operations in Liberia and in the 1990s, Ghana and its West African partners learned a vital lesson. Control of the sea can determine success on land. Not much has been written about the ECOMOG Naval Task Force, but its impact was decisive. In Liberia, when the Rebel National Patriotic Front of Liberia, led by Charles Taylor, seized the country, it also took over two major ports, the port of Buchanan and Greenville. The NPFL hoped to export timber and import weapons through these ports to fuel their war. ECOMOG naval forces thwarted that plan by enforcing a blockade of those ports and the Liberian coast. By cutting off the MPFL seaborne supplies, ECOMOG helped starve the insurgency of farms and arms. In fact, a UN Security Council arms embargo was enforced at sea. And I recall one incident where I was involved. I was then serving with the task force on board Ghana Navy ship, Yogaga. We intercepted a freighter, MV Ceros, carrying a cache of NPFL arms, which was seized by ECOMOG, crippling the rebel offensive at the time. Many other ships were intercepted or sunk for attempting to violate the operations. This is a powerful example of how maritime power can shape outcomes on land. Global maritime threats. We see similar dynamics globally today. We are all witnesses to how control of strategic waterways confers influence. Look at the Strait of Hormuz today. Naval posturing and blockades there have sent ripples through global oil markets. Previously, the Red Sea had also been in the headlines. In late 2022-2023, Iran, a relatively small group, global insurance and drawing in great power naval deployments. Let us turn our attention specifically to the Gulf of Guinea, our maritime neighbor. The Gulf of Guinea from Senegal down to Angola, and is endowed with marvelous resources, gas, to venture much further. In one notable case, pirates boarded the tanker MT Curaçao Trader about 210 nautical miles off the coast of Benin, demonstrating blue water capability previously unseen in our region. Equally concerning has been the shift in pirate tactics over time. Evolved into sophisticated operations targeting crew kidnapping for ransom. The region witnessed a wave of hostage takings of seafarers between 2018 and 2020. In 2019, 151 foreign crew members were abducted for ransom, and the pirates always targeted foreign crew members because that's where they get the ransom. And in that year, 2020, 95% of all kidnappings at sea worldwide occurred in the Gulf of Guinea. These are staggering figures that underscore the threat to human security and international shipping. What is the economic cost? It has, Samson has just mentioned some figures. The economic cost of maritime insecurity here is equally alarming. Piracy off the West African coast is estimated to cost regional economies and the international community over 500 million each year. Where does this figure come from? It is not mainly the value of stolen cargo or paid ransoms. Those are actually relatively small. Rather, it is the cost of countermeasures, increased insurance premiums, hiring private security or naval escorts, hardening ships, and the burden on regional navies and coast guards. And according to one analysis, for every $1 pirates steal from victims, shipping lines and the Gulf of Guinea governments collectively spend $524 on counter-piracy efforts and protective measures. These costs are passed to the consumer, as was emphasized by the chairperson. That is you and me. In essence, the criminals extort a few $1 million a year, but the region as a whole bleeds hundreds of millions trying to guard against them. This is an unsustainable drain on our economies. Additionally, coastal communities and industries suffer indirect losses. Fishermen, for instance, fear venturing out because of piracy or are driven out by illegal foreign fishing boats. Oil companies have had to divert shipping routes and bolster facility security. Port revenues suffer when trade shifts to safer regions. About 95% of the internet we all use reaches us through a growing network of undersea cables, which are frequently threatened by sabotage or accidents at sea. And in fact, only last week, MTN announced that due to some damage to their cables offshore, internet availability had been disrupted. So we pay a heavy price for insecurity at sea. A price measured not just in dollars, but in lost livelihoods and stunted growth. Regional efforts to combat maritime security has been done so far to combat these threats. There have been numerous efforts nation could tackle these maritime crimes alone, given the transnational nature of the threat. This led to the landmark Yaoundé Code of Conduct signed by Gulf of Guinea governments in 2013. The code is a cooperative framework where Gulf of Guinea states agreed to share information, coordinate patrols, and prosecute offenders. The Yaoundé architecture established maritime coordination centers across zones. We have the Interregional Coordinating Center in Yaoundé, and we also have the regional centers, CRISMAL and CRISMAC, for West Africa and Central Africa, respectively. Information sharing has improved. Joint patrols, such as Operation Anwanzi, which is conducted among countries in Zone F, including Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Liberia, and Sierra Leone, have been successful. However, the Yaoundé framework from 2013 was visionary, but after more than a decade, we have insights into its shortcomings. It is imperative to streamline the structure by empowering the regional coordinating centers, that is CRISMA and CRESMAC, and possibly downsizing the intermediate layer of multinational maritime coordinating centers. Currently, we have 5 of those, AD for Central Africa, and then EFG for West Africa. Each one has a multinational maritime coordinating center, the one for Zone F being here in Accra. And these sometimes introduce delays and fragmentation, and has also proved financially unsustainable. After more than 10 years of implementation, very few international staff have been seconded to the MMCCs due to member states' inability to sponsor their officers to the centers. These centers therefore lack zonal character. Mostly they are manned by national staff. If we strengthen CRISMA with robust staffing, direct data links to all national maritime operation centers, and the national maritime operation centers operate very well, and authority to coordinate cross-zone operations, we might respond faster to pirates who cross from one exclusive economic zone to another. Now, let's look at nexus between violent extremism, the nexus between violent extremism and maritime security. A lot has been said about violent extremism in the Sahel. But we cannot discuss Gulf of Guinea security in isolation from the broader security landscape of our region. West Africa today faces a dual menace: terrorist insurgencies expanding from the Sahel southwards, and persistent criminality, including at sea, exploiting weak governance. There is an emerging nexus between violent extremism and govern, but have alternative governance. And fragile states are a boon to all bad actors, whether terrorists or pirates. When state authority is under siege on land, it creates opportunities for illegal exploitation by sea, and vice versa. In recent years, the Sahel region has experienced a dramatic surge in jihadist extremism. Unfortunately, violence has not stayed contained in the interior. We have just listened to how terrorist groups are expanding of fast-moving incursions, attacks, groups like Janim and the Islamic State regional franchises. How does this relate to maritime insecurity? In a few important ways. First, a state fighting for stability on one front, let's say the land, which is in the north, may have fewer resources to monitor other fronts like its coast, and we've seen those shifts. I remember around 2007, when Ghana had just discovered oil, there was a lot of investments in the Navy, and by 2012, they had commissioned about 8 ships for the Ghana Navy. But as soon as violent extremism reared its head, we saw that resources shifted to that front, neglecting the maritime space. So from 2012 until somewhere 2021, we had no new ship commissioned for the Navy. So as coastal West African states devote troops, funds, and attention to preventing terrorist attacks on land, criminal networks, be they traffickers or pirates, might seek to exploit any resulting security vacuums in the maritime domain. We could call this a squeeze balloon effect. When you hold a balloon and squeeze it, you are only crashing the bulge in another area. So as you crash the threat in one area, you crash the bulge in another. So pressure applied to one area might cause bulges unless governance is holistic and simultaneous, and that has been stressed today. Second, extremist groups and maritime criminals can become enablers of each other, even if their motives differ. Terrorists engage in violent and illicit trade on their activities, often using coastal routes. For example, the smuggling of arms, narcotics, or contrabands through West African ports and waterways furnishes income or weapons for insurgent cells further inland. Both thrive in environments of poverty, weak governance, and corruption. By addressing these root causes and improving intelligence coordination, we strengthen our defenses against both pirates at sea and terrorists on land. In short, achieving security from the Sahel, Gulf of Guinea, means adopting a unified approach that douses the fires of extremism on land while flooding out the pirates and smugglers who ply our waters. Maritime security in Ghana, what are the challenges and what progress have we made? Ghana as a nation with a coastline of about 540 kilometers and significant offshore resources has a vital stake in maritime security. Traditionally, Ghana's maritime domain was relatively peaceful compared to our neighbors. For many years, we experienced no major pirate attacks in our waters. This might have bred a false sense of security in the past, consistent with the observed threat perception dilemma, which holds, and I quote, "The greatest threat to security is the general lack of conviction that any real threat exists." Once you are comfortable, no threats, you think that no threat, and you don't prepare or invest. So Ghana suffered its first real attack in June 2014, when a Greek-operated oil tanker, MT Ferratelis, went to the coast of Tema, being hijacked by pirates who stole its cargo of oil. Was not immune to the expanding piracy epidemic. And following that, between 2014 and 2021, more vessels, including Ghanaian registered tuna vessels, in or near Ghana's exclusive economic zone, were attacked or used for criminal activities by pirates operating out of the Niger Delta. I recall that during my time as Chief of Naval Staff, the Ghana Tuna Association met with the then president to outline their concerns about insecurity in our waters and their vulnerability to. They threatened to stop fishing in Ghanaian waters and move elsewhere if nothing was done to protect them. A lot of tuna vessels have been attacked and people taken from them as hostages. I was called and tasked with developing measures to protect and reassure them of their security while fishing in Ghanaian waters. Lacking the patrol vessels to cover the vast area, we took a bold step by putting armed guards on all tuna vessels, and that worked very well. Since then, no Ghanaian vessel had been attacked until 26 March 2025, barely a week after I had left office. The Ghanaian trawler MV Mengzin 1 was taken hostage off the port of Tema, and the captain, chief mate, and chief engineer, all Chinese nationals, were abducted. This prompted the current administration to deploy armed guards on fishing trawlers, in addition to the tuna vessels. And that has since worked for them. However, it appears the threat vector is changing. On 26 February this year, we woke up to the shocking news of the attack. A group of artisanal fishers, numbering more than 70. They were held hostage for several hours in their outboard been mentioned already, leaving them stranded at sea until they were rescued by the Ghana Navy and other security agencies. There are more than 100,000 indigenous artisanal fishermen in Ghana, and the fish value chain employs more than 500,000 Ghanaian men and women. If nothing is done indigenous citizens, the human and food security challenges will be enormous. These events were a wake-up call, underscoring the urgent need to retool the Ghana Navy and other maritime security agencies. And I'm happy to say that I know it is receiving serious attention from government, as the Chief of Defense Staff has alluded. Governance challenges. Okay. For Ghana, as in many countries, has been maritime governance and interagency coordination. Multiple agencies have roles in our maritime space. The Ghana Navy, Marine Police, Ghana Maritime Authority, Fisheries Enforcement Units, Customs. If you list them, there are more than 20 agencies. These stakeholders operate in silos, sometimes even with unhealthy theft rivalries. For instance, jurisdictional overlaps lead to confusion. Who responds to a fuel smuggling vessel? Is it the Navy's job as the sea's military guardian, or the Marine Police job as law enforcement agency? Or is it the National Petroleum Authority as regulator, or the Ghana Maritime Authority, which has overall responsibility for maritime security at sea? Such theft wars and a lack of clear protocols undermine our ability to respond swiftly to incidents. This problem was recognized, and a crucial step forward was the development of a national integrated maritime strategy, which the then President Akufo-Addo formally launched in 2023. Actually, Naval Captain Dr. Kamal is here, the Director General of Ghana Maritime Authority. He was a lead consultant for developing that strategy. Now he's in a position to review it and implement it. So we look up to him to ensure that we implement what we develop together. Thank you, sir. The NIMS is a comprehensive blueprint designed to harmonize all maritime security and governance efforts within a single framework. It emphasizes information sharing among agencies, delineates approach at sea. A related aspect of governance is a legal framework. Ghana lacks specific legislation on piracy and maritime crime. It is often said that nothing is illegal unless explicitly. Thank you, the lawyer. With more on Gulf of Guinea coastal states to champion that global call. Many of our neighbors have been compliance with the resolution while we still await ours. Thankfully, progress is being made through draft maritime and related offenses, which seeks criminalize piracy under serious maritime offenses in accordance with UNCLOS and conventions such as acts against safety of maritime navigation, commonly known as the SUA Convention. Once passed, it will give our Navy, Marine Police, and prosecutors the legal clarity and jurisdictional reach they need to act decisively, whether incidents occur within or beyond our territorial seas. This will serve as a motivation because it empowers them to act confidently, knowing their arrests will lead to trials. Moreover, successful prosecutions can even raise funds through fines and asset seizure, which can then be invested in better equipment for our forces. Now, I go straight to policy recommendations. I have only 3, so I'll finish. In light of the above analysis, what can Ghana do and our regional partners do to better address the intertwined challenges of violent extremism and maritime insecurity? Let me conclude with these ones. First, governance and funding. Ghana's National Integrated Maritime Strategy is an excellent framework on paper. The key now is action. step is to put in place the governance structure it prescribes. This means establishing a high-level maritime security council of decision-making chain. Roles and responsibilities must be clarified to agency competition. Additionally, strategies and intentions will falter without consistent funding. Maritime security has long competed with pressing land security needs and others for limited budgetary resources. I propose that Ghana create dedicated funding streams for maritime security tasks, and some of these were identified in the names. And one ideas institute maritime security on commercial activities, analogous to the security by airport on tickets. For instance, a small charge on each entering our ports can be collected into a fund earmarked for the operations of the Navy, Marine Police, and coastal surveillance systems. Let me clarify that the Ghana Maritime Authority already charges a maritime security fee for its operations, but its utilization is strictly governed by law and is not available for other agencies. Second, capability and cooperation. Policing the sea cannot be done by the Navy alone. And this is a provocative recommendation I'm here to make. The Ghana Maritime Police Unit should be significantly expanded and professionalized to handle law enforcement in our territorial waters, that is from 0 to 12 nautical miles, which is part of our land territory, and all our laws are applicable in that zone. And also the port areas. This will free up the Navy to focus on blue water, higher-end tasks like piracy responses and offshore asset protection. And one way to achieve this is a model of embedding or seconding experienced naval officers into the Marine Police leadership and training staff. And this has been done with the Maritime Authority. I know when Dr. Kamal took over, he requested a number of naval officers to assist him, and it can be done with the Marine Police as well. Naval officers have the seafaring and tactical expertise that a largely land-focused police service might lack. By leading Marine Police units and sharing knowledge, they can inculcate naval standards and skills within the unit. And as mentioned, Ghana's parliament should treat the Maritime Offences Bill as a priority and enact it into law. I recently chaired a roundtable organized by the University of Ghana Law School to review the bill, and it looked great to me. I understand it has been submitted to Parliament for enactment. It is our prayer that the process of enactment last. ECOWAS and ECAS should review the Yaoundé architecture for maritime security, restructure it by downsizing, if necessary, scrapping the 5 zonal coordinating centers to free up resources to beef up the regional coordinating centers, that's Cresmau and Cresmac. I believe they have the ability to coordinate the whole of the sub-region's activities. Additionally, Ghana should advocate within ECOWAS for more joint patrol agreements in which countries contribute vessels on a rotating basis to a combined patrol force operating in hotspot areas. Currently, Nigeria is leading efforts to establish a combined maritime task force. Member states have issues with the task force's structure and proposed concept of operations. There is a need to build consensus and resolve all differences regarding the formation of the task force. The need for a standing arrangement is well established. And we should invest in technology. And I'm happy having a private conversation with the CDS, and he talks about how they are trying to bring in a lot of technology into the armed forces. Maybe we should expand it to other areas. Effective maritime security today requires strong maritime domain awareness. The Ghana Maritime Authority has contracted for a modern coastal surveillance system, which includes over-the-horizon and the Gulf of Guinea are two sides of the same coin. They both threaten the stability, prosperity, and sovereignty of nations like Ghana. As I have discussed, violent extremism creeping in from the north and maritime insecurity lapping at our southern shores must be addressed in tandem. Ghana stands at a geographic and strategic crossroads. We are a coastal state with a stake in the ocean economy, and also a West African state in the neighborhood grappling with insurgency. We therefore have every reason to lead by example in crafting comprehensive solutions. Our sovereignty, won on this day in 1960 as a republic, will be truly meaningful when we can defend every inch of our territory, from the northern savannas to the Gulf of Guinea waters, ensuring that defense means being proactive and collaborative. Ghana must continue to strengthen its own capacities, our armed forces, police, and intelligence agencies, while actively engaging in regional cooperation. At the same time, we should tackle root causes by promoting development, good governance, and opportunity in vulnerable communities, as has been mentioned, so that neither terrorists, recruiters, nor pirate kingpins find fertile grounds to operate. The good news is that we are not starting from scratch. We have lessons. We have had some hard lessons from our past. ECOMOG showed unity and sea power can overcome chaos. We have new strategies, such as the National Integrated Maritime Strategy and the Yaoundé Code of Conduct to guide us. And we have partners willing to support us. What is required now is unwavering political will and coordinated action, which we have been assured is there. The recommendations are outlined, from implementing the NIMS, ensuring sustainable funding, bridging agency gaps, refining regional tactics, passing crucial laws, to leveraging technology, are all within our reach if we prioritize them. Securing Ghana's maritime domain is in the national interest, just as securing peace on our northern border is. In fact, they are one and the same mission, that is defending Ghana's sovereignty and enabling our people to live in peace and pursue prosperity. So by addressing threats from the Sahel to the Gulf of Guinea with resolve and foresight, Ghana can ensure that this generation and the next will enjoy the full blessings of the sovereignty of our forebears who worked so hard to achieve it. God bless our homeland, Ghana, and make her great and strong. Happy Republic Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. We will now take a quick water break, and when we resume, we should do less than half the time allotted for the panel discussion. Less than half, a minute. And before we started, I attempted to cut a bit of the program, and I got a very stern warning that you don't use your powers. You have been handed, you follow it. But on this particular time, it's given to the moderator and the panelists when we take over. And I'm going to cut it. Sir, you were actually quoting Article 19.3 when you spoke about unless a thing is proscribed, it is not illegal. Article 19.3 of our 1990 Constitution. We have listened, and I've been reading Major General Emmanuel Cotier's occasional paper. It's a very fresh paper he has on the new dynamics of the role of the military in peace and security in Africa. And he urges regionalism and coordinated action. Now, getting to know about particularly what our two speakers have stressed on, beginning with Professor Kwesienin, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, breaking away from our security parks. What are the threats and the reality we face? So we take a quick break, for 10 minutes or less and return to our seats to finish up in the next 20 minutes. Thank you all very much. Please, we can take a quick break now. Thank you very much. Distinguished gentlemen, welcome to Hamidu Hall. And to set us in tone, let's have the national pledge. My motherland. I pledge myself to the service of Ghana with all my strength, with all my heart. I promise in her majesty, our heritage won for us through the blood and toil of our fathers. And I promise myself in all things, uphold and defend the good name of Ghana. So help me God. Thank you very much. That sets us, our heart and mind in tune with the spirit of the national duty and resilience required for the discourse. Please take your seats. For a moment, I will not delay any further. I'll just go straight to as the very first question, and that will go to Professor Kwesieni. As I mentioned before we went to the break, with Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger breaking away from ECOWAS defense pacts, Our regional security architecture is fractured. The UN is warning of a disastrous domino effect moving south. Realistically, can Ghana protect itself alone, or are we fighting a losing battle without a united regional front? Prof, use this.
Yeah. Okay, no, I think my mic works. No, I think it's unrealistic to think that Ghana can and must fight alone. We need the intelligence sharing, we need the joint exercises, we need the political direction. But I think there are occasions where there isn't a whole of government approach. That individuals say things and do things that are not coordinated from a center. And I think that gives a different kind of impression. We've been posturing about our leadership capabilities, but I think quite on a number of occasions, that posturing is not underpinned by the resourcing, the intellectual depth of the political arguments, and that weakens the posture a little bit. Two, a school such as this, the Kofi Annan Peacekeeping Training Center, and other pillars of our defense and foreign policy framework must be harnessed much better to project Ghana's image. So there are quite a number of cases where ministers have spoken at important meetings, and you wonder, where did this come from? What is the anchor upon which such a statement has been made? So we need first a much better coordinated, coherent understanding of where we want to go internally, and then we can go external to say, look, we want to lead a process of bringing people together. And I think the fracturing of ECOWAS creates great opportunities for us, and that leadership process should start in preparing Ghana to take the chair of ECOWAS or AU. I don't know, AU. Right. But that leadership just wouldn't come on a silver platter. They'll come to Accra, wine, dine, and dance, and go away. But we need a harmonized process that engages the key actors on the continent, that engages the African Union. A specific document is developed in which Ghana tables. Then the leadership processes can then start.
My next question is to Vice Admiral Issei Yakubu, retired. And thankfully yesterday, Parliament, even though the flood got our attention, they managed to pass the maritime law that was requisite that you want to be passed. The illegal fishing and maritime trafficking I referred earlier drains a massive $2.3 billion every year from West Africa. You gave us numbers that also are staggering. From your experience at the helm of our Navy, how much of this stolen sea money is directly funding terrorist bullets and insurgencies we are seeing on the land in the Sahel? And how do we cut off this financial pipeline? Because from your presentation, it's obvious for both of you, if we're able to cut the financial pipeline, then we succeed in, as it were, thwarting the efforts.
Thank you very much. I heard during the break, I was alerted that the bill has been passed. And I think that is congratulations to Ghana. We need to give our country a round of applause, because it was very worrying that we championed the Security Council resolution to urge our countries to pass this law, and we're late in coming. Better late than never, so we're happy about that. Coming to the terrorist nexus, I don't immediately have figures to show how much from piracy gets funneled to terrorists or vice versa. What we know is that it's been established that there is a nexus. They work together and they enable one another. And that's what has to be cut. And to cut that, that's what I emphasize, that we need a whole of government approach. Just as Prof has mentioned, if our intelligence fusion center should have both maritime and land, and CDS has also just assured us that something like that is coming on. Once our intelligence follows both from the land to the maritime, and there's no, that division between what's happening in the maritime domain and what's happening at sea, then we can follow the trail. Intelligence is key to solving this. We have to follow the financial trail. And sometimes I think it is easier than we are doing. This terrorism starts, if we talk about terrorism, it's on the land. They try to get their logistics from the sea.
Right.
Piracy starts and ends on the land. So the pirates emanate from the land, and whatever they do, it ends up on the land. And I dare to say in our case, in the Gulf of Guinea, we know where they originate and where they terminate. Why can't we follow them there? And when they are paying ransoms, those who negotiate the ransoms and things, what intelligence do we have on that to see how the money trail flows? So it all boils down to having a whole of government and a regional approach, as well as also having intelligence on the financial flows.
Right. We'll take a couple of questions from the audience, so you get ready. But proceeding, the UN says that terrorists thrive where the social contract is broken. I didn't hear only you say that or repeat that fact, but I heard also your colleague speaker refer to that. So with about 76% of attacks happening within just an hour's drive of a border, that's 100 kilometers, if you like. So if we take the Tema motorway, you need just about 5, drives back and forth to achieve that. Our northern frontier is incredibly vulnerable. NCCA research over the past have shown us that. How do we rapidly fix the poverty and lack of governance in these border towns before extremists step in and offer themselves as alternative governments?
Well, I think they already stepped in and offering themselves as alternative governments. They are providing social welfare. And this goes back more than a decade and a half. And it's not only in the Sahel. Alternative governance, if we take Accra Dollar Power, if we take Nkrane Abrewa, how have these communities survived over all these years? That's number one. Number two, if you see the volumes of fertilizer that is smuggled across Ghana, of plastics, the uselessness of quite a number of our magazines. Sometimes people wonder, why have we not been attacked? Because we provide a framework and an architecture that supports some of the violence out there. I want to come back to your 76% of all terror 100 meters from our border. I suspect this is from the Economic and Intelligence Unit or from ACLED. The Counterterrorism Center of the African Union uses a different methodology.
Okay.
that has a considerably lesser amount. For ACLED and other institutions, the presupposition is that this room takes X number of people. And if there's an explosion here, then there will be X plus 1 deaths and then X plus 2 injuries, without counting the specifics. So the African Union Counterterrorism Center, which is in all GS, is always fighting this battle. And I think that is what raises some of the questions around who determines where, how, when, and then what. The vulnerable border. Only 5% of our borders are occupied or are manned. Okay, the distances are massive. I mean, if you travel from Kulungugu to Pusiga to Paga to Hamle down, I mean, there's nothing. So my argument once more becomes, if the threat from the north is really that bad, why are we equipping those who are the frontline officers?
That's scary. And the statistics I referenced was from the Global Terrorism Index.
Yeah.
Now, please, I saw a hand up already, about 2 of you here. There's one at the other end here. So 3, 4. All right. Please be quick with your question. Introduce yourself quickly. Yes, go ahead. It's on.
My name is Owula Mangote. I'm a media practitioner based in Boku. The Ghana National Petroleum Corporation is exploring for oil in the Voltaire Basin. And that's going to cover about 30 in the northern and savannah regions of Ghana. Professor Enin, in view of the security challenges in those areas, for example, land, education, and again, as we've heard now, the closeness of those areas to the border, which is vulnerable to terrorism spillovers. How would you? What's your take on what the nation should do in terms of policing GNPC's exploration activities in that area? What's your take on that? Because I'm concerned.
Thank you very much. There are 2 others right there. Yes.
Major Narion, Ghana Army. Sir, your opinion on this, how do you think Ghana should prioritize? Should it be hard security or soft security response to violent extremism? Thank you.
Major Michio, Ghana Army. And my question goes to Professor Enin. Having alluded to the fact that there are more issues of human security that Ghana needs to deal with rather than trying to address the issue of extremism. And one of the things we come across is the fact that when it comes to dealing with human security, it's more expensive than the hard security. And the key thing that comes up is the issue of funding. But I think that a country votes funds to areas that it prioritizes. And so it is more of an issue of prioritization than it is of financial constraint. So what exactly is hindering the prioritization of that human security situation that can, in the long run, keep the issue of violent extremism? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We had a right.
Major Bedema Ganami, using Burkina Faso security situation as a classical example, when you look at the center, east, center, sud, and then the Boklo Dumahun region, according to the Global Terrorism Index and data gathered from ACLED, these are areas with a lot of illegal mining sites, which has become very attractive to these terrorist armed groups. Now, for the past 5 years, data has proven that we have recorded attacks as close as 10 kilometers to the border of Ghana. And the fact that we have some of the illegal mining sites at our northern areas, how can Ghana reposition itself to address the illegal mining situation that we are facing, such that it does not become an attractive ground to these terrorism groups? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll take some responses. And from the way I saw the hands, I take it that this is the only round we are doing. After that, we will shop. Anybody has a question to ask? Okay, please bring it here. Thank you. Please put your hand up so he can see. Thank you. After, then we take this last one, making it 6 questions. Yes, please. Let's hear your question.
I am Naval Captain Na Ayele Akoyayi, participant from the National College of Defense Studies. And my question goes to my former boss, Rear Admiral Vice Admiral Yakubu. Sir, the Yaoundé architecture covers maritime security, and we had in mind the landlocked states as well as the littoral states. But now we see that the Sahelian states are coup affected and they're less engaged. What, in your opinion, sir, can coastal states like Ghana do to sustain regional cooperation when our northern states are fragmenting? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. The very final one.
Chantikeno Babanda, Zambia Air Force. Question goes to the professor. Violent extremism often grows where communities feel neglected, marginalized, or poorly served by the state. For example, if border communities lack roads, jobs, schools, health facilities, and security presence, extremist groups may exploit public frustration. How can governments combine military security with better governance and service delivery in vulnerable communities? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Now let's take some responses. Yes, Professor Ening, from the very first Owula Mangote, policing GMPC's exploration, should we do hard or soft security response to terrorism? What is hindering prioritizing human security, which is cheaper to do? And then how can Ghana, reposition itself to deal with Galamsey, which provides room for this infiltration?
So the GMPC, about 10 years ago, I was hired by GMPC and some oil companies to do some work on the Volta Basin and a couple of the regions. I think there are about 250 inland, potential oil drilling sites. The core problem that we found related to land demarcation, chieftaincy, the allure of the potential wealth that will come, so we did a fairly extensive report and handed it over. I don't know where it is. But let me make this point. This discovery would not necessarily lead to more problems. Now, I presuppose you know the distance between Bolgatanga, Navrongo to Paga very well. What are all the petrol stations doing? We've created an economy or a criminal economy that allows fuel to crisscross our international boundaries, and people are making money. The cost of a liter of petrol in Lome is 700 CFA. In Kunjwari in the north, it's 10,000 CFA. So you can see the political economy of petrol smuggling across the borders. Between Pusiga and Kulungugu and other boundaries, there's almost I mean, the distances are so far, the equipment's almost non-existent, that, the smuggling goes on. So I'm not too concerned about this exploration. It may compound the criminal networks that are already in existence. But the unemployment, if you look at the videos since the floods, don't look at the water and the people being taken away. Close your eyes and listen to people's voices and the anger in the voices of the youth, the sense of having been let down, excluded, swindled, and being left on their own. Okay, there's real anger out there. I think it's a combination of both hard and soft. 2 years ago, we did some work for the UNDP, focusing on how livelihoods could be supported in the 5 northern regions to prevent radicalization and recruitment and all that. And we had suggested and calculated how very affordable, easy to maintain, water pumping machines could be distributed to communities so that all year round vegetable farming could go on. But that is not where the money is. Governments want to showcase multi-million-dollar projects and not a 1,500 water pump to a community. Okay? But all-round vegetable farming is good to support the kinetic side, which is a word I just learned about 10 years ago. Because if you go to Navrongo and you visit the Tono irrigation dam and you see the vegetables that are produced all year round, it gives you an idea of the potential that is out there, where we to support communities with little pumps, irrigation systems, good seeds, some basic fertilizers, and we can transform lives. I was telling, I think, Ambassador Satu this afternoon, if you've built a 2-room house, for those who started going to Tamale by air 20 years ago, you didn't see much until the plane was almost landing. But now, probably 2,000 meters, you can see the roofs shimmering. After you've roofed your house that way, got a satellite, are you just going to throw it away because? No. We listen to the communities. We go to the communities arrogant, pompous. Here we come from Accra. We know what your solutions are. I think we need to give communities the capacity and the capabilities to be able to live nicely. The Major Bishop always asks me very difficult questions. So I'm not very surprised that she has asked this one. Once more, this is tied into my earlier point. Human security must not necessarily be expensive. I think the elite settlements that followed post-independence has not changed very much. Human security as our ability to provide food for ourselves and to create societies without fear is a common, collective, desirable end. And what does it really take to do that? I have never forgiven for telling our farmers we didn't know that the cocoa prices could collapse. So what were you doing when the monies were rolling in? You didn't have people who made projections? You just took your first salaries and the V8 and that was the end? It's the same with maize. It's the same with beans. Okay, I've been described as the Fulani ambassador because I'm a cattle header. Okay, I like nothing more than the scent of dung because it's money. Okay, but not a single extension officer has come to my farm in 25 years.
When you go, the first thing they ask, how much are you paying? Okay? Human security is about extending state presence to where people need it. And extending state presence is not about some huge thing. As for the major from, I think, is it Burkina Faso? No. The point about illegal mining, it's everywhere. We've lost control. The state is complicit in the crime. We have Blue Water Guards and NIMOS. Great initiatives. But it beats my mind. I've just traveled in doing the armories inspection from Accra through Kasua to Ewutu to Winneba to Apam to Cape Coast to Takrady to Elubo back through Sefi. The Galamsey is along the highway. Are we blind? Or I'm the only one who has spectacles? No, I went a town like Wasa Ekropong 20 years ago. It was an average Ghanaian town. I went back in February. It was like the Wild West. Fancy vehicles. Traffic. Just get out of town. Me, I like chopper because your wife will not use 4 grass cutters to make soup for you. But the chopper, one grass cutter has been caught in a trap, one has been shot, one was knocked by a car. So it's a complex soup. Very tasty. Wasel Kopon has the most expensive grass cutter in the whole of Ghana because the Galamseyers have money. Kids are having metal detectors running around all over the town. Are we blind? So let's not deceive ourselves.
Right.
The first step to resolving the problem is telling ourselves the truth. Violent extremism, yes, services. When I was a kid in Esamankese, Akimoda, and Cape Coast, there were mobile library vans that came around at a particular point in time. And you could just stand in front of your house and borrow a book. Okay? Let us take services back to people. Let people feel we are independent. I always challenge politicians. If you think you are doing well, make a referendum whether the British should come back, and you will see the results.
All right.
Okay.
This was directed at you. Some of us don't understand whatever the Yawande, whatever it is.
I wrote it down.
So what can coastal states do?
Okay, thank you very much. Can I chip in a bit with this hard security, soft security?
Right.
Prof has given all the arguments for soft security, which we all support. I think I also talked about it. But what we shouldn't lose sight of is that the hard security also matters. I remember we met the former Nigerian CDS, who is now their Minister of Defense. And the advice he gave us was that don't let them come. Because once they enter, you lose control. And it can be very, very expensive. Your schools, roads, and all those soft security things become useless once the terrorists take over.
Don't let them come.
Don't let them come. That was his advice. So that's just by the way. Coming back to the maritime security, yes, it's true that I didn't go through the whole architecture. When they did the zones, they divided West and Central Africa into 5 zones. And each zone had a landlocked country as a member because they have maritime interests. And we know that we all know the transit cargo that goes there. So, and then they are even by the laws, and the lawyers are maritime lawyers are here, Madam Chair, Dr. Kam. They even have more stakes than just taking their cargo from the maritime domain. So they found it necessary to add them. And I know for Zone E, which is Nigeria, Benin, Togo, they had Niger as member. And when they did their asset pledges, Niger pledged a maritime patrol aircraft to support the architecture. Then Ghana had Burkina Faso, and then the other zone had Mali, I guess. But when they formed did their coups and formed their AES, they said they withdrew. But just as it happened on land, whilst they were detaching politically, militarily, we continue to cooperate, both on land and at sea, because it is important. So when it comes to maritime security, we still find a way to cooperate. And you know, when they receive their transit cargo, it is our military that escorts them all the way to where they are going. What we can do to sustain it, just to keep engaging them, so that we keep exchanging intelligence between what the terrorists are doing and what is happening at sea, to see where their linkages are, and then in order to be able to break those links. So I think militarily it was agreed that both sides found a need that we should continue to engage them, to engage each other, and that is ongoing. So I will say that is about that. So the engagement continues.
Right. Thank you all very much. I'll now ask we can make an exception for one more question, or is it a contribution? Please bring the microphone here to the front. The microphone. And Dr. Vladimir Chidanso's hand is also up. So we make exception for the two, and then we wrap up.
Thank you for the exception. I just want to draw attention to something that Professor Enin said that has to do with security on the northern borders of our country. It is real. He said 5% is the only land space that we are occupying. That is true. But are we just opening our arms in despair? No. Is it of concern to the country? Yes. And that is why 3 years ago, the government accepted the proposal from the military to put up what we call the forward operating bases. As we speak, we have 15 of them being constructed along the northern borders, and 4 will be coming on board and will be operationalized before the end of July. I was in Pakistan last week, and I was speaking with the Field Marshal, the chief of their defense forces, the lead negotiator between the Iranians and the Americans. And I asked him a very simple question. I said, Field Marshal, how are you able to dominate your borders? And he said, General, where we cannot sit, we try to be able to see. Where we cannot occupy, we make sure from wherever we are, we can see. And that is what the present government is doing. If you recall, during the SONA this year, His Excellency, the Commander-in-Chief, announced that he was making available funds for the setting up of an electronic warfare center. I can tell you that that is far ahead. We are going to have that center of the size of about a brigade. That will include units that will be producing drones, as we have started already, units that will be training, and units that will be working around fusing all our intelligence and things like that. We're going to have strategic drones, which from Tamale can see up to the northern side and up to the southern side of the country. So it is a problem. Can we have troops deployed along all the borders? Probably not at this time, because it's very expensive. But for the fact that we can see from Tamale what is happening at the northern border, and also even across our maritime territory, I think that we are on course. But it will take some time. We are aware of the problem, and government is doing certainly what it is required to do to be able to resolve the situation. Thank you for the exception.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Mr. MC. If you hadn't allowed me, I would have still called for this and remarked them to see whether you really passed the gun. So thank you. I was saying, I'm thanking you for giving me the opportunity. If you didn't, recall your papers from Lagos and remark.
Right. As for University of Ghana, it's easy to recall.
Of course. I wished I did before the CDS because of any I'm taking on where landed. The government is doing all that because the porosity of our borders worry us a lot. The borders are porous. They are coming. They come Burkina Faso. Some time ago, they were only 1 kilometer across our border. So we're saying they're going to cut across, dig across a tunnel through Ghana and get to the littoral, not through only through Ghana, but the littoral states are wanted for their activities. I don't believe in that. If you study terrorism, and I'm a student of terrorism, I'm not a terrorist, but I'm a student of it. As for, and you see, terrorism will not come when there is the receptacle which will contain them is not ready.
Right.
If you study it very well. So we don't have to be so much worried about the porosity of our borders. Yesterday I was saying somewhere that I believe that between hell and heaven, the border will be porous. It should be, so that if hell is better, some people will smuggle themselves there and vice versa. But there must be that appealing something, enticement. So what we have to be doing is what the CDS has assured us. Very, very important. What will bring the terrorists here for them either to settle, I think Professor Enin mentioned dollar power, for example, and other things we are doing, the Galamseys and whatnot. Then, example, Jinim in the Sahel, especially in Mali, when they started their operations, there were several other organizations, and today there are about 73 of them, terrorist organizations in the Sahel, fighting each other. What Jinim did was to import the terrorists, and the terrorists from southern Algeria, that is Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, and they have a place to stay, so they came in, and that exacerbated the situation. In our sense in Ghana, I am always warning that the internecine feuds like the Boko crisis can help one of the factions, either Kusasi or Mamprusi, to invite Jinim, come and help us. Then they'll have a place to stay. This is what we should be more worried about, rather than the porous borders. As I said, heaven and hell, they should be porous.
All right, thank you so much. Those have been very reassuring, from those who are deep within and can see where they cannot sit. So, Professor Enin, and we want to take your final comment, concluding comment as we leave in the next 30 seconds.
No, I think it's important for us to recognize that this is a collaborative effort, that we can resist, we have resisted, and that we have the institutional mechanisms and frameworks. But I think what is fascinating once more in this country is where we've come from. That for an occasion like this, there's a meeting of minds from different cultures, civilian, military, police, sharing and discussing a common problem that we think there should be a common solution.
Which is even open to the entire public.
It's even open to the entire public. So I'm very hopeful that when there is a conversation, that is the start to finding solutions to our common problems.
Right.
So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The closing remarks by Vice Admiral Issa Yakubu, retired.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me say a big thank you to Ghana Force Command and Staff College again, and congratulate them on their anniversary and the One Ghana movement for putting this up. These conversations is what informs policy, and I'm happy that the Military High Command is here. I have seen that most of the questions were naturally directed at Professor Enin, because the maritime domain is still a bit hazy in our minds. But you see, it's not, maritime security is not only about having security to do things, because it is a place, as the CDS said, that we cannot sit. So the technology and its surveillance has to be thorough. But then if we police it well, and as smart nations did, they have been able to maintain global dominance. As we said, over the last 500 years, no nation has gained global dominance without maritime, dominating the maritime domain. It is 70% of the Earth's surface, like it or not. And there is a blue economy to protect, which, if we harness it well, would even generate more resources to take care of all these other land security needs. So I'm urging all of us to start showing more interest and turning our attention to the maritime domain and to see what the challenges are and how to better make use of the potential that it has. So I want to say the organizers have nailed it perfect by bringing maritime security with the land to find what the nexus is. This is a great opportunity. So thank you very much, and thank you, Samson and the team, for excellent organization.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for applauding our speakers. We are going to invite our chairperson to give the closing remarks, but before she does so, let me remind you that the dress code for tomorrow's event is smart casual and is strictly by invitation. And also, right after here, we move into the entrance for photography, right in front of the Hamidu Hall for photography. Let's all get ready for that. In the meantime, we'll invite the Commandant of the Ghana Armed Forces Training and Doctrine Command. Is he the one supposed to do the presentation to our... All right. We are inviting the Commandant of the this particular, training institution to bring the presentations to our guests. In the meantime, we would also like to recognize in our presence the Commandant of the Ghana Armed Forces Training and Doctrinal Command, Rear Admiral Maxwell Ahen, Commandant Ghana Military Academy, Major General Arthur, Commandant Nigerian National Defense College, Rear Admiral Ahmed, former commandants and service chiefs, distinguished generals, both serving and retired. I've seen also General Nunu Mensah around, very popular names in the army. And after they retired, directors general of state institutions, alumni, both local and international, Dr. Vladimir Nchidanso, my former teacher, consultant, Ghana Armed Forces Command and Staff College, heads of sister security services, and members of the diplomatic corps. Thank you all so very much for being here, and all of you who have joined us from across the country and across the world through the virtual platforms and through Channel 1 and Joy News. Thank you very much for joining us. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, it's all.
Our guest of honor, Madam Chairperson, the Commandant, distinguished generals, both serving and retired, Director Generals of government institutions here present, alumni of Ghana Armed Forces Command and Staff College, ladies and gentlemen, as is customary in this college, the Commandant makes a token presentation to speakers who come for the Republic Day lecture. This year, he intends not to depart from the customs. I therefore humbly request the guest of honor to be assisted by the Commandant in presenting his token to the guest speakers and the chairperson. The first to receive the token is none other than the Master of Ceremony for today's occasion, in the person of Mr. Samson Ladi Ayenini.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Next is Professor Kwesi. Vice Admiral Isa Adam Yakubu, retired. And last but not the least, and before she gives her final closing remarks, Her Excellency Josephine Nkrumah. Thank you very much, sir.
I think that's it.
My. Has it been exciting, insightful for the audience as it has been for me? Has it been? I don't know how the two lecturers managed to pack so much information in the short time that was allocated to them. These are whole subject matter courses on their own. And for them to share the depth of knowledge and experience that they have with us in this time where we all leave more enlightened, we all leave more informed, and perhaps more challenged to do more when it comes to security, I think they deserve another round of applause. Let me use this opportunity to also commend my own big brother, Mr. Samson Ayenini, for the way he's moderated the entire program, the knowledge he also brought to the fore by sharing facts with us. Facts don't lie. And so it places, it gives us the stark realities of what we are faced with as regards the topic that we discussed. Before I go on to my concluding remarks, I really would like to take this opportunity to also commend and thank the One Ghana movement for this growing partnership with GAFSI. This hasn't been the first lecture that they have collaborated on, and I know that what Prof said was very true. The One Ghana movement enables, facilitates, and creates the space for sensible conversations to be had on national issues. Please, let's give them a round of applause. And I would like to thank, and I would also like to congratulate this distinguished premier institution for its Golden Jubilee. 50 years of existence despite the odds, 50 years where you have grown in relevance, 50 years where you have contributed contributed to shaping national policy and dialogue on our national security, whilst ensuring that our territorial integrity remains intact, is not gone unnoticed. I yield to you. Thank you, Commandant, for keeping this light burning. And thank you so much for producing the great men and women who share so willingly, who share with commitment, and the knowledge that they bring to the bear helps to build a stronger nation for all of us. The two lecturers provide rich insight to all that, pertained to the subject matter. Prof, as usual, started with some facts and his unapologetic presentations on what his views were. He shone the light on the AES states and particularly used Mali. My takeaway was something he said that I think he had also borrowed from a friend of his. That's the audaciousness of violent extremism. It's not just a fancy phrase. It is the reality of our times, of what is occurring in the AES states, and particularly in Mali, where today violent extremists are more or less competing with the state in terms of social warfare. That is a novelty that must not go, unnoticed. Because where people are already disillusioned and somebody comes and projects himself or herself as the answer to their problems, then you know that we have a challenge. And therein lies the very important question: hard security, soft security. How do we address this? And Professor Eni went on to talk about who, what, when, and how determines the securitization, evaluates the threat, and determines whether a nation has come to its tipping point. In as much as he raises these questions, very pertinent questions, he also posits that it is important for us to understand that securitization in itself is not the answer. He goes on to speak about the issues that face us daily and asks a very important question: what takes precedence? Is it the daily lives lost from motor accidents? Is it the lives lost from mining pits that collapse? Is it the daily lives lost from floods? These are important national issues that we must find answers to. He goes on to express to us that we must also find a way of localizing our national security. And by that I mean, my understanding of what Prof was saying, that oftentimes when we've left our security in the hands of partners, when their priorities shift, it leaves our perception of dependence on our international partners, it leaves us vulnerable. And so we must determine how we shape those partnerships and how far we want to go in dependence. You are only as strong as your weakest link. The regional dimension to this. Prof never shies away from lambasting ECOWAS on its role in building or forging stronger integration within the region. And it begs the question, because having worked in ECOWAS and understanding all the protocols that ECOWAS has generated, that all of its member states have signed up to, and then when it comes to the national stage, these that signed up onto these protocols, these decisions, then look the other way. Failed implementation processes, stalled implementation processes, non-implementation of many of these protocols. So are we just looking at a talking shop where we would go and speak as a region with the nice and fancy words, but when we come home, we decide to do differently? And so, Prof, when you've often, had a go at ECOWAS, I ask myself, who is ECOWAS? ECOWAS is not a creature sitting on its own. Every decision taken by the Commission is premised on decisions at the highest level of ECOWAS's authority, which is the heads of authority. So when heads of state, presidents, taking advice from their technical advisors, their ministries, their strategic partners, take decisions at the regional level and do not implement it, who do we blame? Is it the Commission or we blame ourselves? For me, it is food for thought. But having said all of these things, we now move to Vice Admiral. And Vice Admiral brings to the fore the importance of maritime security when we look at violent extremism. He says one phrase that struck me. The extremism in the Sahel and the piracy in the Gulf of Guinea are two sides of the same coin. That should be everybody's takeaway. Far too often, when we have spoken about violent extremism, we look at the terrestrial side and we forget that we have severe vulnerabilities in the maritime domain, in our maritime spaces. And I maintain that until we have also begun to engage our coastal communities as the gatekeepers of our maritime space, engaging youth, which is so important in this day and time, because there is a UNDP study that shows that the actors of violent extremists, the young men and women who are involved in the actual field operations, the study revealed that they did not even have a sense of doing this out of an ideological concept. It was because there's bad governance, there are no jobs, people are poor, people are hungry, and they see this merely as an outlet. And when citizens do not feel valued, especially in the face of opulence by an elite group of people, it does not take a lot to sway their minds. And for me, it buttresses what my primary school teacher, Professor Inchidansu, said. So much concerned about the porosity of our borders. It is the porosity of our minds. So the soft security is of immense importance. And because I worked with NCC and I went down to engaging all strata of society when it came to human security and seeing security as a human-centered approach, I realized firsthand that the average young person, the woman carrying her farm produce on her head daily, the woman who is waiting at the coast for fishermen to bring fish, only to find that 3/4 of the net is made up of plastic waste. It is easy because they don't find dignity in living. And it is easy, therefore, that bad governance becomes one of the enabling factors for violent extremism to find its grip in our nation. Vice Admiral took us through all of the things that have gone on. He provided us with the role of maritime in even the Liberian conflict, what ECOMOG did. And it shines the light on the importance of this nexus, not just, us talking about it, but seeing greater connectedness between what is going on in the Sahel, what is going on in the Gulf of Guinea. And he ends by giving some key recommendations. How do we implement the National Integrated Maritime Strategy? We have almost 550 kilometers of coastline. And along that coastline, we have communities that live there. And these communities, half of the time, is where you find the slums, is where you find abject poverty. What are we doing to bring them into the fold of harnessing the potential of the blue economy? So that these people who are inherently those who are vulnerable to, aligning to violent extremism, we find opportunity making them actors within the blue economy, exploiting the blue economy for our potential development. He speaks about a synchronized response across agencies. Too often, our institutions are, just so involved in turf wars, not understanding that each person's or each institution's role goes to complement one another. We must see ourselves as one cohesive whole, so that where there's overlap, through dialogue, through conversations, we can find a way to coexist in order to achieve our goals. He says that we should link the maritime domain awareness efforts with land-based intelligence on violent extremist movements. He also talks about creating dedicated funding streams for maritime security, and goes as far as suggesting that we institute a maritime security levy. And Vice Admiral, I do agree with you there. In the shipping space, every time there is the slightest change that causes some sort of impediment to shipping agencies or shipping lines, they pass the cost on to the shipper and by extension to us, the consumers. In that same vein, why can we not institute that maritime levy that enhances and provides the network for our maritime security? And I was hoping that we would have some legislators here to hear from us, to hear this, but they are not here. Finally, I want to end by saying that it's been amazing, an amazing lecture, listening to all of you, the comments and the questions that were raised. How do we juxtapose soft versus hard? How do we find the balance? And this brings us to what both lecturers have hammered on: the role of this institution, and like institutions in our country. How are we going to use the knowledge that we have gained here to shape policy, to review policy, but more importantly than just shaping and reviewing policy, one of the things that we have not been great at is implementing policy. How do our voices carry beyond the walls and the corridors of this institute so that we can not just shape and review policy, but we would see real implementation using practical knowledge, practical ideas that can bear fruits for ensuring that our borders as a nation remain intact, we remain secure, so that the average human being in Ghana, the citizen, goes to bed and sleeps confident that there is a security and I can sleep peacefully. And as we leave here, let us remember, we are all gatekeepers and custodians of our security. So whether it's coming from the Sahel or from the Gulf of Guinea, remember that we all have a role to play. They say, see something, say something. Let's go more enriched and more invigorated to do more in our maritime space and to ensure that violent extremism does not take firm grip in our nation. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. And like the lawyers will say, with the leave of the CDS himself, please, this meeting is closed. We go to the front and have. Thank you very much.